As President Trump claims he's discovered his own Watergate, how will the United States get to the bottom of it all? We have a special panel for this story. Reporter and MSNBC analyst Howard Fineman, former FBI official Sean Henry, former DOJ official Matt Miller, and former CIA official Jeremy Bash. Let's start with the FBI here, and Jim Comey basically saying, according to the New York Times, he wanted to get to the bottom of this with regard to whether a president would order this kind of wiretap. You were a senior FBI official. How do you see this?
Well, I don't see that the president would make that order. If, in fact, the FBI was engaged in some investigation related to national security, the FBI may have gone forward seeking a FISA order to do some collection related specifically to that national security threat. That wouldn't be ordered by the president. And I think that the statements that have been made by President Obama's former or spokesperson for President Obama, they clearly said that the president didn't order that. I don't know that anybody's clearly denied that it ever happened. It's unclear what happened here. We've got...
Right. Let's pause on that point here, especially for folks watching trying to keep up with it. Just on what FBI Director Comey is trying to do here, and he is a name that has become a household name. Let me read from the New York Times here more from this brand new story. A statement by the Justice Department or Comey refuting Trump's allegations would be, quote, a remarkable rebuke of a sitting president, putting the nation's top law enforcement officials in the position of questioning the truthfulness of the government's top leader. What do you think of that piece of it, of Comey v. Trump?
Well, I think that President Trump making an allegation that he made over social media without putting it in any context, that in and of itself is outrageous. It's taking the attention away from some serious national security issues. You know that there are a number of congressional committees that are talking about these hearings. Those hearings originally started to look at what Russia did as it relates to our democratic process and what the Obama administration's response was. How did the intelligence services, going back to last year, 2016, before the election, deal with those? That now has started to take on, in just the recent month or so, a different color, where you've got allegations that there may be certain officials in the current administration who were engaged in somehow communicating with Russians.
Matt Miller, the color is red because there are a lot of serious concerns, not proven yet, but serious concerns about these investigations. I want to read to you also regarding Don McGahn, President Trump's top lawyer, over the weekend. A lot of news breaking this weekend. According to the Times, a senior White House official said McGahn, the president's chief counsel, was working to secure access to what Mr. McGahn believed to be an order issued by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court authorizing some form of surveillance related to Mr. Trump and his associates. Matt Miller stipulating that we don't know whether or not that order exists. What is your view of the White House trying to get a hold of it?
It's absolutely inappropriate. We have to remember here that the White House, people potentially in the White House, certainly people from the campaign, are what the FBI is looking at, trying to find out whether people from Trump's campaign were colluding with the Russian government to swing the election for now President Trump. For the White House counsel to go and pressure the FBI or the Justice Department to turn over a FISA warrant if it exists, even for him to go to them and ask them whether it exists, is completely inappropriate. And I would hope that people at the Department of Justice, well, let me put it this way, the career people that I worked with when I was at the Department of Justice, I know would strongly push back on that type of behavior. I think the political people I worked with at the Department of Justice felt very strongly about the independence of DOJ and the separation between DOJ and the White House, and to push back. And I hope that the people running the Justice Department now, Jeff Sessions and the other people that came in with President Trump, will feel the same way. Although, of course, Sessions would be recused in this instance, and presumably, given his recusal, would have nothing to do with deciding whether to turn that information over to the White House or not.
Jeremy, and then Howard.
Well, I would just add that a federal judge would have to order a wiretap of anybody suspected of being a foreign agent inside the United States. So let's just get one thing straight, which is one of the aspects of the President Trump's tweet over the weekend was demonstrably false. President Obama could not just order something to be wiretapped. It would have to be done with the say-so and approval of a federal judge who would find that there would be sufficient evidence, probable cause, that there was either criminality or that there was foreign espionage activity emanating out of Trump's inner circle.
Howard?
Well, I think the big picture, you mentioned the big picture at the top, Ari. Let me give you the big picture on this from the viewpoint of Donald Trump's inner circle. They think that they're in a battle with what they refer to as the deep state in Washington, and particularly in the intelligence communities and investigative arms, to deny their legitimacy, that is, of the Trump administration and the Trump White House. And Donald Trump's a control freak, and he's in a situation here where there may be investigations of Russia's influence that bear on Donald Trump, that obviously bear on his campaign, bear on the people around him, but he can't get at them. He can't control them because we have a tradition in this country of police investigations and intelligence investigations, at least nominally, being separate from politics, even the President of the United States. This is infuriating Donald Trump, what led him to tweeting the way he did yesterday morning. And this is a tweet shot, if you will, by Donald Trump across the bow of the intelligence and investigative community.
Do you
saying,
think, Howard, do you think he believes it? Do you think he believes it?
I have no idea. I have no clue. But the practical effect of it, politically and administratively, is Donald Trump declaring, almost, beating his chest or roaring like a wounded lion, saying, I'm coming after you, and we're going to get you people because you're trying to get me. That is the mentality that he has. That is the danger of this situation. And James Comey, with the action that he just took, is basically saying, I dare you. Don't come after us because we're going to fight back. And this is an almost unprecedented, this is, I think, an unprecedented situation at the beginning of the administration, We saw this, if you read the history books, this is how the Nixon administration ended.
Right.
In open war between the investigative arms of government and the presidency. Donald Trump is beginning his presidency that way, and a lot of his people, a lot of his supporters, they view it as a conspiracy against him, and he's going to play right into that. And James Comey can try to be the voice of reason all he wants. Trump, this is open war now between Comey and Trump. That's how I view this statement by Comey.
Sean, Howard puts it very well, and it speaks to also the way that Donald Trump, whether it's clever on purpose or just a lot of noise that works, he is basically leading his supporters to look at this and say, well, if there's a wiretap, that's dodgy. If something was under investigation, that's problematic, which is not true. If you're a normal citizen and you find out that a judge in any context, foreign or domestic, has approved a tap, that's usually a bad sign for you. You don't usually get to flip that around and say, well, I'm going to call out the judge or the FBI. Michael Mukasey, who, as you know, is both a former attorney general and a former federal judge, knows of what he speaks. He says today he thinks there might be some kind of wiretap, even if the president, Obama, was not the one who ordered it. Take a listen.
If a wiretap did exist, it would have to have been approved by a FISA court based on real evidence. So if there was a wiretap, does it mean there were suspicious things going on between the Trump administration and the Russians?
It means there was some basis to believe that somebody in Trump Tower may have been acting as an agent of the Russians for whatever purpose, not necessarily the election, but for some purpose.
Mukasey was careful, but he also in that interview said he thinks there may have been a tap.
I think that's absolutely right.
You think there was a wiretap?
I don't know whether there was or not, but when there's a discussion about a wiretap, and we're talking about a broad issue here with the Russian government influencing the democratic election by breaching the DNC and leaking strategically certain documentation to change or influence people, and then we've got concerns about certain people in the administration who are talking to Russian officials, that creates a specter of some type of collusion. It certainly does not eliminate the concern that there may have been this ongoing coordination. I think what Donald Trump has done, though, is he's hijacked the narrative, right? He's put this out, and he's looking to change the way people are thinking. We're talking about the Senate and the House, Congress, authorizing an investigation to determine what happened, and people are focusing their attention on this other issue. And as you've already stated, I think quite well, it's saying if there was a tap, it's not me, I'm not a bad guy, they did something wrong.
Right. And so, Jeremy Bash, when you look at this from an intelligence perspective, does this kind of behavior from the president and this clash with the FBI should that give people pause or cause for concern about whether the authorities are getting close to something that Donald Trump doesn't want people to know?
Well, whatever a president says should be based on evidence. He has access to the entirety of the government. He shouldn't spread a falsehood. But I do think it's important, Ari, to note that this morning on Meet the Press, Director of National Intelligence Jim Clapper said two important things that I think sort of changed the vector of the conversation here. One is he said to his knowledge, and he would know, there was no FISA order against Trump Tower or against that circle of people. Now, that doesn't exclude every possibility of surveillance against Trump associates, but that's pretty sweeping. And then second is he said that
Is it sweeping? We got to go, but briefly, there's a lot of people that could be linked to Donald Trump who aren't in the building.
For certain, and there could also have been overseas collection targeted against Russians overseas that swept up people. I think Clapper's statement was a little broader. We can go back and look at the tape. But I think, here's the point. I think the administration and the Justice Department didn't focus until very late in 2016 on this issue of potential collusion. The intelligence community's assessment only came out in early January. I think this is just really being looked at now, which is why the Congressional Oversight Committee's investigations are so very important.
Jeremy Bass, Sean Henry, and Howard Fineman, thank you very much for being here. Matt, we'll see you in a moment.